everyone. If we can all come in and sit down, we're going to get started. Today, actually, you'll not be hearing from me. I just want to say hello. I'm Mercy Miller. I've done a lot of our online meetings. Welcome back in person. Yes. I'm going to we have a lot of new faces, so I'm going to let Christine kick off the meeting, and then we would like to do, introductions because I see some new faces, and I know you probably some see new faces from the project team as well. Okay. So, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. First thing, I'm Christine Macron. I am the project engineer from the Department of Transportation. So the project team would like to thank everyone for coming into our first in-person meeting again after COVID. So give everyone, this is a big turnout. We didn't expect, I think we have 10 RSVP and look at this now. So we do all appreciate, for coming in here. So I guess we will start with introduction. I'm sure I'm a new face to everyone. So I think we will start with the Department of Transportation. Again, I'm Christine Macron, and I'll give it to Neil, who is my question.
Good afternoon, thanks for coming. Neil Patel, Principal Engineer with the Department of Transportation, and then our unit here in Consultant Design Major Highways. We kind of oversee a lot of the major studies and major projects that are ongoing in the state. Thanks.
Good afternoon, my name is Tom Doyle. I work for environmental planning in the Department of Transportation. Basically, the job of environmental planning is to oversee the environmental document. This right now is the panel document that we're working on. And following that, we'll be doing the EIS, I assume, probably. And so we'll be overseeing that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carlo Leone. I'm a special advisor to the Commissioner in the Commissioner's Office, and my role is to help both the Department and the Commissioner have outreach to the community and to the public and to the municipality. So we just are here to make sure that everything goes as well and smooth as possible. Thanks.
Then towards our consultant, we have CDM Smith.
Sharad Kaluri, you probably have seen me a few times. Project manager for CDM Smith for the I-84 Danbury project.
So you see his face a lot. He's one of the originals. And then I think Tim.
I'm Tim Gaffney. I work with Sharad. I'm a member of CDM Smith group and work with the SLR folks as well and DOT on this project.
And then with SLR, which is our environmental consultant here.
Hello, everyone. Again, welcome back. I'm Janine Gowan, and I'm the project manager for the environmental side of this from SLR. We've been doing this for so long. We started this project as my own room, so we don't even have the same name anymore. But it's really good to see you all back here.
Rick Black, I'm working with SLR. I'm the study lead, and it's just great to see everybody in person because I've only been on Zoom calls.
Yeah. So if you recognize, he did a lot of presentation the past couple back years. So that's it. And then we have Connor at the back from SLR.
Hi everyone, I'm Connor Dickus, GIS analyst for SLR, and been on the project team for a few years, and I mostly do the mapping.
Oh, that's an understatement.
And then we have FHI, who is doing our outreach, and they're at the back. You met them during your registration. That's Marcy, and then Talia.
Yeah, hi everyone, my name is Talia Geraldo. I'm with FHI. I do a lot of the social media, so if you follow the Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, I'm the person behind that.
And then there's Marcy, you've seen her, and we've heard her, during our back meeting, she usually starts singing, and we've heard her earlier. And so with that, that's the project team, and we will go from table to table. And so I would request that you introduce your face, and then introduce yourself.
No, we want their faces introduced.
Yeah, I know the faces already. Introduce yourself, and then tell us which group you represent. So I guess we'll start with this table.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Dave McCollum. I'm with the Town of Bethel Land Use Department.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm John Tully. I'm Deputy Highway Commissioner for Putnam County and Interim Planning Commissioner for Putnam County. And so here with you. Thank you.
I'm Vinny Tamanya, I'm Transportation Manager for Putnam County and also Project Manager on the Southeast to Danbury Rail project, and also recently a Exit 1 resident, newly moved in resident of Danbury. So
welcome to Connecticut. And to that table.
So I'm Greg Dembowski, the Town of Brookfield. I'm the Economic Development Manager.
I'm Ralph Tedesco, the Director of Public Works with the Town of Brookfield.
I'm Betsy Painter. I'm a project manager with Westcott.
Shane Ayersheff, Economic Development Director, City of Danbury.
Paul Steinmetz, work in the President's office here at Westcon.
And then to this table in the middle. You. Hi.
Tom Altman, engineer with the city of Danbury.
We are Karakanda, city traffic engineer, city of Danbury.
And then at the back table.
Chris Rashid from Connecticut Weather.
James Root, Connecticut Sierra Club, and live right by exit 4 in Danbury.
Oh, okay. And then finally this table, please.
Katie Pearson, City of Danbury, Danbury Library Director.
Alex Lackey with AAA.
John Gentile, represent the Commission for Persons with Disabilities in the city of Danbury.
Okay, I think that's everyone. I hope I did not miss anyone here, but I appreciate you all coming again. So I guess one reminder, if anyone here is uncomfortable, we have masks at the back if you want to wear masks. Otherwise, I guess let's proceed. Did I read it in your reminder?
Perfect.
No, okay. So welcome to our staff number 11, first in-person, this one. Welcome to the in-person TAC meeting. So first thing, you guys, in our email, one of the first emails is we sent a package. Do everyone have a chance to read or look at it? Or I think they are, we have some today as well. And with that, do you have any questions with the package? Do you have a package or?
Well, you had a question there.
Yeah, and if there's a chance, I thought for sure on the phone he was very helpful, but if there's a chance to give a complete strategic overview about how the Pell specifically fits into the DEPA review.
You know, that was beautiful because Chris asked me that question and I thought that would be a great way to start the whole meeting today. So I'll do that overview.
Oh.
Not now.
Okay, not now, so he'll do that. So any more questions, everyone, from the package or general questions? So with that, you met everyone, the project team. So Neil is here, he is there. Kevin Burnham, who is my supervisor here, basically he replaced Andy Fessenmeyer. He's one of the originals, so that's, unfortunately, he can make to today's meeting. Then that's me, Christian Macaron. Then Surat for CDM Smith, Janine for SLR, and Rick, who will do most of the presentation. And then Marcy at the back, who is our outreach group. So for today's meeting, we are going out, do the PAC update, provide the PAC update. Then Rick will go on with the screening results for concepts, the remaining concepts for East, West, and Center segments. So if everyone recall last PAC meeting in August, we did talk about the mainline screening process. So today we're just doing all the remaining ones. Then we will do the screening of concept combinations. So these are all the concepts from all different segments. And then Neil will finish up with next steps. And then we will open, after that we will open for discussion and questions. So that, PAC update, so that's me. So we have screened, since our last meeting, we have screened remaining concepts. So that's, you know, the West, the East, and Center segments, which you will hear from Rick later on, the results. And then combined concepts for entire corridor. So that's something that you will hear as well from Rick. And then also we added new concepts to the website. So if you notice on our project websites, we have concepts 1 to 16 and concept 22 up there. So the project team makes an effort to put most of the concepts there. I believe most of the concepts that you see here around are mostly up in the website, I think except for one. And we'll work hard on that to put that up there very soon. And then the project team also attended a pop-up. This was last month. The project team attended the soccer game at Ecuadorian Civic Center. And then we are still active in our social media accounts. So again, if you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, I think it's I-84 Danbury. You will see up there. We've been very active with that. And so with that, I will give the presentation.
Perfect, thanks.
Christian, before you get, we are filming this. Can you hear okay without us using the microphone? Yeah. Okay.
Good. There's a mic there.
Yeah, my voice is too loud for a microphone. I wanted to start off with a Emerson, Lake and Palmer song, and I was told that I cannot, but welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. I am excited, and thanks to Westcon for housing, I'm really excited that you guys could make it in person, and we would really like some feedback after this on if you like the in-person, if this is comfortable for you, if you prefer the virtual. So while we're sitting here, think about, how comfortable you are and how you like these presentations. To your point, to Chris's question, I'd like to just go over a little bit about what a PEL is. PEL stands for Planning and Environmental Linkages. So it's the linkage between the COGS, the big planning, the metro planning, the municipal planning organizations, who may say we are expecting an industrial park here, we need new infrastructure there. Whatever the planning is out to 2050, whatever their planning profile is, a lot of times that is done in a vacuum. All of a sudden the DOT will say, oh, we need to fix a problem on a highway, or we need a new highway on Greensfields. Sometimes that linkage doesn't happen. The PEL process is supposed to link the two. And it's supposed to provide these conceptual drawings, these conceptual layouts of solutions to a problem. So first we looked at a project purpose. What we want, what we think is a purpose to here, and we get Federal Highways buy-off on the purpose that yes, there's logical termini here, there's a good purpose for some sort of project in the future, so we have a PEL purpose. And the beauty of the screening that we've been through on Mainline, and we'll show you today for East, Center, and West, is that we start screening things against the purpose. If they don't meet the PEL purpose, then they're not a concept that should go forward. Are they feasible to build? Can they be constructed? Are two of them the exact same, but one has a little bit better benefit or a little bit more impacts? So we start screening things out. And then at the end, what is our level of impacts? And is something really so impactful that we can't get it permitted, or it's just a very bad choice when we have better choices? Then, to your point, part of the PEL process is to identify funding sources, identify potential projects, breakout projects, early action projects, and then provide some things that could be included in a reasonable range of alternatives for a NEPA project, whether it's a categorical exclusion, an environmental assessment, or environmental impact statement. So the idea is an EIS sometimes went on forever and ever and ever. The PEL process, linking all of these planning ideas and reaching out to the public in great detail, start screening things away and providing the affected environment background and providing those first alternatives so when NEPA starts, they can be folded directly in. So once NEPA starts, they can look back on affected environment and say, oh yeah, we know that there are these issues. We know that these resources exist in this corridor. And then once they start designing solutions or putting design to concepts, then they can start with that 30% design, really looking at, oh, what am I really going to impact? How can I mitigate to avoid or minimize those impacts? So it's really a good process to give a lot of information once a project gets funded to do a NEPA step. Any questions on the process? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wonder if it doesn't, the whole process doesn't kind of systemically presuppose success with the NEPA review.
Presuppose success? I don't believe so. I think what it does is it identifies potential project. Now, the NEPA could, and I mean this very honestly, the NEPA can throw out every one of our concepts that we proposed, because when they go to the NEPA, they may come to a different set of public or to all of you, and there may be new information. Oh my gosh, we in the PEL team never heard that, never researched, never found that, or they come up with a solution that is so much better than we ever thought of, that gets in one of the reasonable range of alternatives, and all of these drop out because that's so much better. So I don't think it presupposes anything, it just pre-populates stuff that they would have to do anyhow.
All right, thank you.
And just in case, because we do love to throw around our jargon, NEPA is short for National Environmental Policy Act. It's the federal program that requires anyone using federal dollars to construct a project to go through a very public environmental review process.
Yeah, any federal nexus, federal money, federal permitting, federal approval.
And we have a parallel process in Connecticut called CEPA, which is the Connecticut Environmental Policy Act. They overlap an awful lot, but we will, at the end of this process, both of those will come into play.
Perfect. So you've seen this a million times. We have screened the concept segments, and that's what we'll show you today. And we have actually at least assembled the concept segments, all of these concepts, into combinations. And we'll show you what those combinations are. That has not been screened yet. So just a reminder, or for those who may be new, this is the entire study area, and you can imagine that there's a lot of issues. That these issues are complex, and there's a myriad of them. So it was broken down into the main line, and this is what we presented in PAC 10 meeting last August. It was our main line segment, the concepts that went into that, which were 1, 4, 5, 8, 9, 22, and 23. You'll see that 5 and 8 dropped out because of fatal flaws. 9 and 22 dropped out because of the matrix analysis with impacts. And 4 and 23 are non-highway, they call them, one's TISMO, but it's like multimodal solutions, things like that that aren't constructed, that can be separate breakout projects. So from the mainline screening, only C1, Adeline, was the only concept that had been presented to date that we had analyzed that went through from there. So if you remember, we've got the west, the center, and the east, and today we're going to start with the west segment. So the west segment, we are going to really highlight the areas around 3 and 4, and also to remind you, we've got the concepts printed on boards. So afterwards, if anybody wants to talk about a specific concept that they're interested in, just grab one of us and start pointing on the board, and we can elaborate. So, Sharat, you want to go through 6 and 12 and
Sure.
talk about the differences?
Sure.
Thanks.
So I know you might have seen concept 6 before. This is the interchange 3 and 4. Am I good with the 3 and 4 area? So this is Lake Avenue. The mall is right here. This is Route 7 coming up from the mall area. This is the Lake Avenue exit that you see. The whole issue now, as many of you know, was people on 84 wants to get to Lake Avenue. They almost take their life in their hands trying to cut over to get to that exit, and especially this exit is pretty tricky. So what this concept does is essentially builds a new connection from 84 over to Seeger Street. So there would be a slip ramp from 84 going eastbound onto Seeger Street. And 84 traffic can take that ramp to get off to Seeger Street and use either go to the mall, either go to Lake Avenue. And there would be a median barrier here that would prevent the 84 traffic to take that Lake Avenue exit as they do today. And what that would do provide is only connection from Route 7 to that exit. So you would not be able to take that exit, which basically kind of splits the two traffic. Splits the Lake Avenue traffic from 84 and the Route 7 traffic from Lake Avenue.
And let me just have them be aware of the legend.
Yep.
So the dark color is new pavement, new alignment, new something on the highway. The beige is going to be your new local roads, new ramps, and then there will also be a blue that any kind of local road changes that need to happen.
Thanks, Rick. So as part of this work, as Rick said, this is all new roadway because we got to reconstruct this piece of 84 to build that Seeger Street ramp because you have to bring the ramp underneath the existing Route 7 connection and shift Route 7. So we can't build, looking at it conceptually, we can't build this crossover that you see. So that's why you see some new work on 84 to build that. The other one, which is concept 12, is very similar in nature. We don't have the Seeger Street connection, but what we do here is instead of 84 traffic trying to take this Lake Avenue exit, and they have to cut over from the left side to the right side, in this option, we are bringing a ramp from 84 to the right side, so they don't have to, what's called a V, they don't have to go over 3 lanes.
84 traffic would already be on the right side as they're exiting Lake Avenue. They would still be taking the Lake Avenue at the same point where Route 7 traffic does, but there's no longer a big weave. A lot of things that happen now is lane drop, and as you merge 7 onto 84, four lanes go down to 3, and then pretty much goes down to 1. That won't happen in this case. We kind of have to provide that connection here so people can easily get off the Lake Avenue. So these are the two variations. They're very similar in nature, not much of a difference between 6 and 12.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
You know, this concept, isn't it for the cause of where people are coming on Route 7 that want to get onto that exit? Now, they're on the left and they have to shift over.
There is that.
So it's kind of, you're just swapping who's doing that.
You're correct. The only difference is the volume shifts that are happening are much fewer. The numbers are much lower when you're doing that. There's still a weave, and that's definitely one of the things that for 12 it doesn't work well. There's still that weaving movement happening, as you said, but it's not as big a volume. With the 84 traffic doing that now, it's a pretty substantial volume that wants to get to Lake Avenue. And 7 traffic, in this case, we are slowing them down. So today, if you look at 7, you're coming onto 84, you almost come pretty high speed onto 84 because it's a straight shot. In this one, we are actually slowing down. We're realigning 7 to slow them down as they're coming. So the speed at which this crisscross is happening is not that high as it's happening today. Any questions on those two before I jump or get back?
Yep. Thanks, Rob. So you've seen the matrices, and I'm just going to flash ahead before we talk about this one. These are the key engineering considerations and some of the additional considerations. These are all the ones that we looked at that there were no differences between 6 and 12. So when you see something as sparse as this, these are the only 2 factors that differ between 6 and 12 when we're looking at screening. So it looks sparse, but we did look at all of those as well. So like Sharad just pointed out, 6 takes care of all of the weaving completely, where 12 only partially takes care of it. We still have that slowed down weave from 7. So that's how these colors are changing. And you'll notice that also 6 now, number of changes to local movements. So at interchange 4, what that means is local roads that normally people have this driver expectancy, there will be changes there. Because that whole was realigned. So that's all of that.
That's mainly because now people have to take Seeger Street to get to Lake Avenue if you're coming from 84. So that's the change that's happening.
So, we looked at all of the things like travel times and construction feasibility. And then we went over to the environmental. And again, we got 3, and we looked at all of these. We looked at community impacts and impacts to disadvantaged neighborhoods and environmental justice neighborhoods. But the ones that differentiated between 6 and 12 were wetland impacts, meaning they needed a full permit instead of just this is pre-construction notification, and stream impacts. So 12, because of that CD road, was a wider footprint. It's got some wetland impacts. Not a killer in any way, but they are more impacts. And same with community facility impacts. So, how do you like that? Oh, that just disappeared for a second. All right. So earlier, we dropped the tunnel for the west segment. C7 came out in fatal flaw. Nothing dropped out in the redundancy analysis. Nothing dropped out in this latest analysis. And so 6 and 12 make it through, and those will be considered in the west segment. So now the center segment.
Actually, can we just make sure that we don't have any questions before we move on, just because this is
That's a good point, thank you.
fresh in people's heads.
So C7 is that tunnel option. You guys saw a lot of social media going on that. So that's the option that got dropped right off the bat.
And like concept, in pack 8 or 9, we talked about that. But yeah, thank you. So if there's no further questions, we'll jump onto the center. And so now we are no longer talking in the 3 and 4 range, but in the 5 and 6 interchanges. So in the center segment, you want to go through? Sure. We got 4
We got
concepts here.
4 in the center.
Yep, thank you.
So I think you've seen probably all of these in the PAC meetings. Concept 3 is the first one where we are proposing a new interchange at Tamarack. So just keep in mind that all the center section options were focused on trying to get better access to the hospital and also getting better access to downtown. So looking at exit 6, which is a partial interchange, what that means is at exit 6, you only can enter and exit to and from the east. You can't connect to and from the west because the ramps are missing to and from the west. And Main Street, obviously, which takes a lot of the traffic, especially going into the hospital, going into downtown, has a full interchange, but it gets pretty jammed up with all the traffic. So keeping that in mind, looking at all the options. So this one, what we call was the Tamarack Avenue option, which looks at trying to get better connection to the Danbury Hospital. So in this one, we provide a full interchange at Tamarack. We will construct a full ramp system at Tamarack. The existing exit 6 connection will be removed. So only the 2 ramps that are today existing at exit 6 to North Street will be taken out. So anyone who wants to go to North Street under this option would have to either use Tamarack or have to use Main Street. So that's the change in this option. So Tamarack would have a direct connection to the hospital. The second one was the Great Plain Road connection. So we, again, looking at how we can get to the hospital, we looked at this to see if Great Plain is an option. And in this option, what we're doing is we're keeping the connection at exit 6 as is. And we presented this option probably in PAC 9, where we keep the half exit at exit 6 as is, but we introduce that western connection to Great Plain. So it's kind of like a split connection. You have the exit 6 connection, and this is the Great Plain connection. So you still have ramps. So if you want to come from the west, you unfortunately have to go all the way past North Street and take this Great Plain road exit and then go to the hospital. But again, an option that we looked at is to provide that connection to Great Plain under concept 13. Concept 16, again, a little variation. Here, we keep the existing Main Street connection as is, the interchange here. But here, we are not providing a direct connection to North or Tamarack. We're providing what's called a new CD roadway. Kind of, if you remember way back, we looked at concept 2, which had a CD road going the whole stretch of from Tamarack all the way to Main. Here we just provide
CD stands for collector
a
distributor.
collector distributor roadway. Okay? So this green line represents that road we would build parallel to 84 on between North Street and Tamarack Avenue, and we would provide these ramps right at the collector distributor roadway. What that would do is allow people to go to North Street if they want to, allow people to go to Tamarack, and basically has all possible ways you can access North Street and Tamarack both. So it's kind of like a midpoint solution between North and Tamarack. And the last one, which recently came into fruition and had discussions with the city, is to not provide any connection on Tamarack, leave the existing Main Street access to and from the westbound direction as you're going 84 west. We would provide a full interchange at North Street, so we would add that new ramp on North Street coming down. This is kind of like a Starbucks, we would provide that ramp connection. So 84 westbound, you can connect from this ramp. Main Street would remain. Eastbound, we would build a CD road. And the main reason for that was eastbound, it gets very difficult to get an on-ramp from Main Street and off-ramp to North Street. So we built this CD road that allows us to provide that connection via this CD road, via this collector distributor road, rather than trying directly to connect to 84. The grades don't work, and it's very hard to introduce those ramps into 84. So eastbound, we build this new CD roadway that allows us to connect to both North and Main. Those are the 4 ones that are in discussion in the center section.
What's the CD?
The collector distributor roadway is essentially a much lower, what we call operational roadway, and it basically the idea is, as it says, collects and distributes the traffic. So it takes the traffic from the highway and distributes it to the local streets. And it's essentially not meant to be going at 55, 60 miles an hour. It's generally speaking a 40-mile-an-hour road, much faster than you would get on White Street or any of the local streets here. But the function of it is to take traffic from the main line, Also, because in this case, Danbury has very quick exits, so we have exits very closely spaced. It helps to put the CD road so you don't have a lot of entrances and exits to the highway. You take the traffic from the highway, you let the CD road distribute the traffic to the local connections. And you don't have to go at highway speed on those connections. So we had a concept too way back we looked at where we were providing that CD road for a longer stretch. Here we are only looking at just between Main and North.
It's probably similar to I-84 in Danbury.
In Waterbury,
Where
right.
they did the widening, and they kind of introduced those CD roads to kind of separate that traffic like shrubs.
Yeah, you see that in downtown Waterbury where you have, I think it's called frontage road over there. It's kind of different term, but I mean, it's the same idea as to take the traffic from the main line and put it on that. Any questions on any of these four?
Just a comment. Utilizing full access at North Street, exit 6, has an impact on State Road 37. Putting in full access at Tamarack has an impact on the city streets. So that has to be considered as far as who's going to, there's traffic there now, but the way it's set up originally, the way this is set up now. Putting a full access at Tamarack, although it's helpful for the hospital, puts a tremendous impact on the city street and puts a burden on the city itself. Right. Whereas North Street would put the burden on the state, who has more money than the city.
There's pros and cons, and that's certainly something that has been looked at as part of this evaluation of these two. Like concept 3 versus 26 and versus 13. Certainly those are things, there are a lot of factors at play. Just, traffic is one of the factors, and certainly the impacts and the layout of how the interchange is put together is a concern. So Tamarack is in a very tight condition, like it's very tight. It's got constraints on all sides. North Street is a little more big, like there's more space generally speaking, but still everything has a challenge. I mean, traffic-wise, this one would be better for the businesses and connection directly to the highway versus someone on Route 37 trying to get to Main Street using Golden Hill and trying to get to Main Street. So I think this one has its benefit. Tamarack certainly does not solve the businesses issue where someone has to now take local streets to get to Tamarack to access the highway. So certainly there are a lot of pros and cons between each of these. And that's all considered part of the analysis.
And if I can add to that, the beauty is, thanks very much, if all of these go through to a NEPA process, to an EIS, as components for a reasonable range of alternatives, then when they start designing, they will look at that stuff in much greater detail than the Pell does. We've looked at that and tried to screen impacts to communities, community cohesion, access to businesses, access to local traffic, or just tossing congestion out to the local traffic. That was looked at, but at a higher level. And once a project goes into the NEPA process, now they'll really design and they'll run a lot more detailed traffic analyses. And now they'll be making decisions at a much lower level. So now the matrix is a little bigger. We've got the 4 concepts, 3, 13, 16, and 26. But now we have a lot more that fell in here that were not in here. So we'll see, first of all, that 16, I think this is one of the really interesting things. 16 worsens the travel time on 7 in the morning and evening, and on 84 in the morning. So that's one of the takeaways here. We'll also see, like Sherrod pointed out, there are really, really tight ramps, meaning closely spaced ramps. What's Federal Highway's general? Is it 1 mile per ramp?
No, it's 1,900. It's a half a mile.
That's half a mile, that's right, half a mile. So these are much tighter fails to meet any requirement. I think those are really the interesting ones here. And then we go,
back to the previous, and I just want to make sure everyone understands that 16 and 26, when I showed you those two, under 16, when we put those, what are called the button hook ramps onto that CD road, the ramp, see the westbound ramp where it ties in back to the highway, is we get very close to the Main Street ramp, and that's what we're talking about. In both directions, we get very close to the Main Street ramps, and that doesn't meet the requirement of what the ramp spacing should be. The same thing happens in 26. We have the same issue, but in 26, we are addressing that by providing what's called an operational lane between exit 6 and 5, which allows the traffic to sit on that operational lane before they get on the main highway. But in terms of physical spacing of the ramps, they still don't meet the requirement. That's why you see the red on those.
so we'll go to the environmental, and we'll notice that we've got, some property take differences. But again, 16 and 26, we're starting, and this is what you're getting at to a degree. Some of these dead-end streets break up community cohesion, where they used to be able to drive through. Now they've got to find a different way through. And we've got some cemetery impacts. So we can see that we're starting to get a few of these worsened conditions. So when we started looking at, so I don't know how many people here watch Chopped. I kind of do. I like Food Network competitions. But they'll come up and say, I really liked your pork sandwich. The sauce was fabulous. It was a little dry. And they'll go on with all these details. And then when they come up and lift up the thing and say, I'm sorry, you had to be chopped. Your pork was just too dry. They don't go over all the other details. It was one thing that kicked them out of the competition. And I like to think of 16. I think the real killer on, on 16 was our project purpose is to reduce congestion, increase mobility in the corridor. And 16 messes it up. I think that's the pork too dry. It might have some good slaw, and the bun was toasted perfectly, but the pork is too dry. So when we came through the screening analysis, it was the only one that dropped out at this level between these four. And if you recall, we had 3 drop out at fatal flaw, 2 drop out at redundancy. This was the only one. So we are moving 3 forward. Now, does anybody have any questions? Taking Janine's cue.
Rick, can you go back to the previous one? So these are 9 of these. So some of these are on the website. 24, 25 are not on the website yet, and 26. So just, you might have not seen 11 or 17 or 24 or 25, but they are kind of very similar to some of the ones you've seen. Just I want to make sure you're kind of aware of that. And those kind of dropped out as we went through these analyses early on.
So now we'll look at the issues associated with the eastern segment of the corridor, the steady corridor. So now we're looking, exit 7, 8. You want to do your thing?
Yeah. So we have 2 in the east that we're going to talk about. There are several others you see in the table that Rick had, several others, but 2 the ones that kind of came into this third tier of analysis. The first one is the concept 14, which is the CD road eastbound. So many of you know if you've driven the 7 and 8 area, one of the big problems is if you're going 7 south to 84 east, you end up on the left side, and someone wants to go to Newtown Road, and they try to kind of cross 450, 500 feet to get to the right, and it's impossible. You just can't do it. It's pretty tricky. So the first thing we did is to look at that 7 south to 84 east connection to Newtown Road. So under this option, which is concept 14, we are building a CD road that starts right from where the 84 eastbound ramp would start to Newtown Road. We would take the ramp from 7, put it on the CD road on the right side. And essentially that CD road would continue, again CD road being the collector distributor road, would continue all the way to the east and tie into the Newtown Road area. We also would provide a slip ramp, so anyone who wants to go from 7 south to 84 east can use this, what's called a slip ramp or small ramp to get onto 84 eastbound. Anyone who's going from 84 to Newtown, as I said, would take here, and then if you're going 7 north from 84, as our concept 1 had, the exit would be on the right side. Today the exit is on the left side. Under this concept, the exit would be on the right side. So there's no left-hand exits or entrances in this concept. The only difference between this and concept 15, which I'll get to you in a second, is the westbound direction. Before I get to that, what we're also doing as part of concept 14 and 15, as many of you, we call it the turtleback. Route 6, as you're coming from Route 6, either from Bethel or coming from the east, into this area, it creates what's called a very looped kind of a travel. You come in on the north side, and you're trying to go to Newtown Road. You're also, it's like a one-way loop here that's kind of going in different circles. Especially the traffic that comes from Newtown Road does this big loop before they get onto 84 West. What we are proposing here is a new style of interchange. They call that a diverging diamond interchange. What that does is puts your traffic on the wrong side. So you basically shift the traffic all the way to the left side instead of traditionally on the right side. What that does is you can put this Newtown Road traffic on the left side and allow them to get to 84 West here directly. That's a lot of traffic. That's almost 1,000 cars in an hour, so almost 10 cars in a minute that are trying to make that left turn. That today travel all the way through Bog, all these traffic lights, the gas station, everything else here, that creates a big mess. Now we put them on the left side and they're able to get to the highway. So we are suggesting this kind of a change in flow to allow that traffic to merge onto the highway soon rather than trying to get into 84. The other thing we're doing is we're proposing some changes here. For example, Route 6 traffic that wants to get to 84 East, just in case someone from the target wants to go to 84 eastbound. We're providing a slip ramp from here that would allow them to get onto the 84 East. Today, they have to do it. They have to go across, come all the way to this light, and there's a ramp here that you have to take to get to 84 eastbound. So certainly small things that could cause a big difference in those traffic flows. In concept 15, the only thing we're doing different from 14 is we're building the same CD road in the westbound direction. So if you're coming from Newtown Road and you want to get down to 84 westbound, today there's a short section before you have to take 7 north. There's like what's called a weaving condition where you take 8 Newtown Road on, 7 north. You don't do that anymore. With this option, you would basically be on the CD road. If you're going to 7 north, you would basically stay on the CD road, go 7 north. Or if you want to go to 84 westbound, you would just continue on the CD road, and the CD road would merge back onto 84. So that's the difference between 14 and 15. Very similar in types of operation, except on the westbound side, there's slight benefit on 15 in terms of how the access is to 7 and Utah Road. Any questions?
Any questions on how the traffic flows?
Yeah.
Chris?
So this has been brought up a few times, but I think that the east segment and the west segment of Danbury have a specific inclination to grow. You know, I think I was talking to Rick about it, that the city of Danbury itself doesn't have much land left. I mean, you could try and repurpose it, reuse it, make it more efficient, and put more people in here, but in terms of the traffic coming from the city, I don't think there's much there. The western and eastern portions of the city, I think, could see a lot more growth. Where is that in terms of this? Like, this looks great now, and we can apply for the next 15 years, but 30, 40 years down the road, if we do see a massive growth on either side, the eastern side or the western side, because I don't even think we're thinking of touching the western side now.
Well, this is also the beauty of the PEL. It links those planning. And what's the, is it 2040? 2040 projections of growth from these planning organizations, and the travel into the travel model have already been incorporated into these.
In addition, we incorporated any kind of future planned projects that are kind of going to construction or going to be built, like if it's a big mall or retail plaza or something.
Industrial
like
plaza, new
those are all
subdivision.
incorporated. Now, certainly, as you said, there could be more growth in this area, and certainly that would be evaluated. I mean, there could be an update made to the projections in the NEPA phase. But to the level we know right now, you incorporated all the traffic projections up to 2040 to incorporate.
And that incorporates, again, that's the beauty of the PEL. It links that to the next project. Thanks, Charlie. Yeah.
I don't know if this piggybacks on the question that was just asked. Right above the T in Stony Hill Road, the section of, I guess, the turtleback is the term that we're using, is that meant to get back in that direction is that still preserved or does that go away?
So the existing ramp would go away, this ramp would go away.
Right, let me rephrase that.
This one?
Right, so if you're trying to get to, I guess it would be 6 West, going from Newtown Road to get to the other side of the highway, there's that.
This one?
Yeah, right, it's right above the T and Stony Hill Road. There's like a little.
Oh, this slip?
Yeah.
That is still there.
Okay, so that would not get affected?
No.
Okay, and then for the diversion.
So what happens is you would still be able to go 6, we can't disconnect this piece here. So you would want to go like especially Payne Road and Old Sherman Turnpike, you've got to connect there, so you need that small stuff.
Okay.
We can't, and what we're trying to do is slide this ramp underneath the overpass.
Okay. And then the diversion diamonds for Newtown Road, is that just for traffic getting onto the highway, or would that also serve the street that goes?
Monterey Terrace?
Correct.
So Monterey Terrace, you would still have to loop around.
Okay.
Let me take it. So this one would be a one-way road that still is, as it is today, one-way south. It still remains one-way south.
Mm-hmm.
You would have a new piece of road put on the opposite direction that only serves the ramp.
Okay.
On the left side though. So there'll be traffic signal here that takes people on the right side and puts them on the left side.
Okay.
Monterey Terrace would still be connecting to 6.
Okay.
And would have its own signal like it has today, its own green light. The thing is that this is detailed, but this intersection would have to be looked at in terms of signal phasing.
Okay.
But certainly that 700, 800 traffic can get out of that whole movement.
Thank you.
Anything else?
How close are the plants from this new CD road to the entrance from 7, both westbound?
Which is coming from?
Yeah, coming from 7, getting on westbound 84, and then from the proposed CD road here. How close are those entrance ramps on it? If you're driving on 84, how often are you seeing cars running?
So you're only seeing this ramp is going eastbound, and then you're seeing the slip ramp here.
Okay.
You're not seeing anything else. You basically, if you're on the CD road, then you see a bunch of ramps coming on and off. But if you're on the main line, you're just seeing this exit ramp to the CD road, and an entrance ramp here from that CD road.
Okay.
In the westbound direction, what we did in the westbound, I didn't touch that. So there's an existing ramp today on westbound that essentially connects to that westbound stub. We are relocating that ramp to the other side, right across the gas station driveways. And the reason there is there's a lot of weaving that happens on that westbound stub of Route 6, where traffic wants to get to the highway is moving over 3 lanes to the right. People who want to get to the gas station are also moving over. And the traffic who wants to be a Newtown Road wants to move over to the left. So by pushing this to underneath the structure over here, this traffic mostly is going to Newtown Road. So we keep all the traffic on the left that wants to go to Newtown Road, and all the traffic on the right that wants to go to the highway. So that way we kind of segregate that movement. So that's why we're replacing that. So to go back to your question, the only place you see the entrance is the exit from here for 84, and then you see the entrance where the CD will come in.
So in terms of like, I think you covered this at the beginning a little bit, but didn't go much in depth. In terms of like animal crossings, migration paths, or any other type of issue that would cause more animals, or just, I guess, the same amount even of animals to go into a 3 or 4 lane highway, is there anything that would potentially cause that?
When we were looking, one of the things we looked at was migration routes, and there are no migration routes through this area. And so you'll have, obviously, your raccoons and whatnot that'll come on. So that hasn't been looked at in that kind of detail, just the varmint kind of thing, but there are no migratory pathways to that.
That was the main question.
Yeah, so there's nothing that's funneling them.
Yeah, across the highway.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Rod. Any more? So, as we looked at these things, once again, I'm going to flip over here. All of these issues were looked at, and all of these were green, all of these were yellow, all of those are red, no matter which one of those 14 or 15 we looked at. So when we looked at congestion and mobility, we see that 15 is a little better. It bettered the travel time, where 14 didn't address that as well. Same with corrections of weaving. And then again, we have a little bit of difference here. We get distances between adjacent ramps and changes to local routes. And there were no differentiators on the environmental side, although we did look at a few. So, and again, for those of you who don't know, I think this has been kind of coming up with a little, let me just go through real quick. We went through a fatal flaw analysis where we looked at this time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different concepts for the east. The fatal, if they were dropped out at a fatal flaw, they couldn't be built. They didn't meet the study purpose. It was not feasible the way that the traffic would move. Something like that that just said, this won't work. Then we had a redundancy. And this is where I have referred to recently as if you've got 2, 3, 4, whatever potential concepts that do about the same thing, serve about the same purpose. One may have a little more impact and one may serve, we've got to have a reason to kick something out so we don't have a, I mean, if you think of 26 concepts, just think of the permutations of combinations we could put together and have alternatives for the NEPA analysis. So the purpose of the screening is to thin that down. So in the redundancy, 10, 20, and 21, these guys serve the same kind of purpose, but not as well. So we kick those out in redundancy. And then what we're going through today is that matrix analysis, looking a little bit more specific. And then also back to whoever's point it was, on all these ramps, once these concepts get screened and potentially put forth as an alternative for a NEPA process or an actual project, they may be completely reconfigured. This is Sharat and his team. This is at this concept level, it's the best solution that we can come up to right now. But we may all of a sudden find out that there's a really important resource that ramp goes through. Or we can make it flow better by a little different geometry. Or we can tighten up slopes and not have as much impact by putting retaining walls. There's a myriad of things that might get tweaked and changed if these go through for alternatives. So these ramps and these directions are wonderful creative solutions from the minds of CDM Smith and Sharat and his team. But it may not be what ends up as what's built on the ground.
And Rick, I would add to that, I think Marcia might be able to tell me how many individual meetings were held with some of you in this room, of years of stakeholder meetings before, during, and after COVID, open listening sessions. We had a big event here, I think in 2017. We had workshop analyses. So we took a lot of care to get input from as many people as possible. Some of the suggestions were outlandish, but we said everything's on the table. So I just want to make sure this is
I think that's really good because that really, it shows two things. One, the importance of the Pell process is to reach out to the public and get that kind of input. And two, it shows the distilling process. So we had outlandish, we might have had 6, 8, 10 different configurations on how this might work. And this is the one that comes out and solves the most problems with the least impact. Those kinds of processes have been going on. But I wanted to kind of go over, since this kind of question came up a little bit on fatal flaw and redundancy. So I'm talking now about the combinations. I said if we had 26 different concepts and we didn't screen any of them out, and we start putting them together in every possible combination, we're going to have a very large number of potential alternatives. So the screening process was to thin that out. We still have a lot of potential alternatives. So if you recall, we only had one alternative that made it through the main line. We had 2, 6 and 12, that made it through the west segment. 2 on the east, 14 and 15. And then the center, we had 3, 13 and 26. These are the ones that we have kept that have not been kicked out during the screening. So now we are left with 12 combinations. M1, W6, C3, E14, 1, 6, 3, 15, 1, 6, 13, 14. You get the permutations. So I have chosen this. So right now, this is our terminology. It may change. We've called these concept combinations, and we've done A through L instead of 1 through 12. So if we had CC1, somebody didn't think that this one had anything to do with that number. Who knows what we're going to do, but just so you have an understanding of why we went to alpha instead of numeric, it was for my simple mind to separate out and not be confused. So we now have 12 concept combinations that we're going to take a next step on. And that is a simple screening process for the 12 combinations. So we've got 12 concept combinations, A through L. We're going to look, again, do they meet the project purpose? I like to think very simply so my little mind can understand. But for instance, one concept may widen the road to the north, another concept may widen the road to the south, and together they're not feasible to build. Something that simple. So we're going to look at feasibility. Will the connectivity work? Will the geometry work in attaching ramps when you got this concept and that concept? And you add the main line to you add a lane to the main line concept. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at the congestion and mobility. We'll then go look at redundancy. And last of all, we'll do the same dot type of matrix analysis to look at impacts. And at that point, we'll have somewhere between 1 and 12 alternatives that we recommend through the Pell process as being part of the reasonable range of alternatives. The reason I say it that way is because the NEPA analysis may choose to analyze another alternative that we haven't presented. It may come up for some other reason. So these are going to be the initial recommendations for the next team that does an actual project as 12 alternatives that they can put in the reasonable range of alternatives. And like I've said before, they may modify, they may change ramps and all sorts of things. But the NEPA process also requires very intensive public involvement. So we will have, that team will have the same kind of interaction with you and all of your constituents to actually come up with, well, we think the ramp should go here. Well, yes or no, why? And really get down to the detail when they start putting together like a 30% design. So I believe that's about it. So if there's any questions on the screening analysis, you can either address me now or we can do it afterwards. Otherwise, Neil's going to talk about our next steps.
And just to clarify, the 12 concept combinations, we're going to go through that screening process and whittle them down to that reasonable range.
Yeah, we hope
to have.
We hope to have fewer.
We'll have
it could
fewer.
be between 1 and 12.
Yeah. So yeah, I can,
if you want
let's
to
go through some next steps while the team is, looking at the, got a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. So the Pell process, does that require public input in any stage of the way?
Yes.
So you said it's intense during the NEPA process, but there's also, and what is that requirement during Pell?
Well, we've been doing it during, like Janine said, we've had workshops and open discussions, and everything's been put on the table, and Marcy's been out to pop-outs and into communities, and so it has been more than our pack. It has been very deep into the community.
And as you can see, as part of the next steps, we are looking to go to a public information meeting later this year, and then there'll be a final one once the Pell document. We're out of order on these bullets, but that's all right. We still have to document everything that's been done in the study, as per, and also get review from FHWA. And that Pell study document will be the basis for the NEPA phase going forward, or any other projects that do come out of it. Just to lean back to this Pell document. So again, that final public meeting would be probably sometime in 2023. I think we were looking in terms of the schedule. Other than that, though, we are still looking at these early actions. In terms of trying to find a project that's probably a little less complex. Let's say no permitting, no right-of-way, something that we can try to implement in the near term, and we still get that benefit. We also have to make sure that it doesn't affect some of the longer-term solutions to the project. So we are still looking at that. We've got a couple that we think we can move forward. I think we have previous PAC meeting, we talked about the TISMO option in terms of what we can do and try and manage within our existing footprint, how we can manage traffic. So again, we're looking at that. Rick mentioned we're going to combine some of the concepts. The screening will be part of that next phase, and as you said, we're going to get to that reasonable range out, move us into the environmental document phase. I think we covered our documentation and our public outreach. So yeah, we can kind of open it up to questions, and I think as we had said before, we'll be here after, we can go up to the boards for some of the individual concepts, we're discussing
The
those.
only thing I would add is that as part of that Pell draft document, which will be available online for anybody to comment on, and, whether you've been involved with the project or not, we'll have a formal comment period where people can email or write in or whatnot, in addition to the public informational meetings, and we will be looking at all those comments before we come up with the draft Pell document. So that will be heavily publicly vetted, along with agencies, state agencies, PAC members, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, one more question. So as we completed the southeast to Danbury rail study, connecting the downtown Danbury rail station to southeast, has that been considered, the impact of that and what that might do to the overall project here?
So we did that as part of our concept 4, which is called the non-highway. So we looked at, as I said, I was talking to you earlier, we did a modeling analysis of seeing what that would do to potentially shift traffic from 84 to put them into rail. And we did not have the level of detail that your study had in terms of ridership and potential draw to that rail service. We were looking at significant improvement to 84 if that rail line gets built. We did not see a big shift of traffic. Maybe because we've not incorporated all the socioeconomic data correctly. But there's a lot of moving parts to it. It's just not seeing what the socioeconomic value of getting the ridership high is. We're getting about a 7% shift of demand onto the rail from Danbury to Worcester. So we did not, but certainly it would work well with any of the highway options. We see
Yeah,
that
I think there's 34,000 PMTs reduction a day. So there is a real impact on that. So I don't know if you.
It's still on the table, Vinny. I mean, it's not. We haven't obviously evaluated to the level that you guys did because you guys had the actual rail alignment and knew how when the trains could turn in the Brewster and stuff like that. That was one of the initial concerns. But we have the level of detail looking at both sides where we saw about 7% shift in ridership from 7% shift in volume from 84 as vehicle demand, not PMT, just as a vehicle demand. But certainly there could be more. I mean, that could be, again, looked at. So we're not saying it's not a good option. We're just saying it should be something looked at and considered as part of the package. As any other concept for us, we also looked at bus transit options. We looked at some regional transit connections that could potentially be established. Maybe bus on shoulders or, maybe off peak. So those are all pieces that could be tied to any of the highway options that can work with that.
Metro North is a pretty important player here. I mean, if the Southeast train station ever becomes a real terminal or a pulse point for the region, in not just rail or not just drawing rail in from Danbury, but also in making it a bus terminal where you have a variety of buses that might go in different directions. That's all going to have a regional impact on how people move around and what the congestion on I-84, 684 looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking with our Bureau of Public Trans in terms of the rail and the bus transit options, and certainly what comes out of the Pell could be a recommendation for further studying those corridors.
Yeah. I get calls every day as transportation manager. They want to know what the leprechaun buses are that are parked along the sides of the roads by the hotels in Connecticut and in other places in Putnam County. And people are using different ways of getting around.
Yeah.
setting aside the ridership, just for a second, the feasibility study that Vinny participated in, I think it had a couple of concepts for the corridor for the rail system. That has been shared with you, I believe, and that's
Yeah, we
being
looked at
considered.
alignment, we did not get into, I know there was some things about how the trains would turn back, to go back to Danbury, and you guys were figuring out that detail, something.
There's 4 options.
Yeah, but we looked at the general rail alignment, how that rail is gonna go into southeast, actually Brewster, I'd say. And then kind of have a reverse and connect to, we also looked at retiming the Hudson line to make sure that, the Harlem line to make sure that trains from Danbury tie into an existing.
Yes.
So we don't have to wait for a long time before they get to.
Potentially get a direct ride.
Yeah, so it'd be kind of one seat ride all the way to Union Central, so we did some modeling analysis, and that's kind of where, but we may not have as much detail as you guys had in terms of information along the New York side.
Thank you. It's funny you mentioned the Hudson line, because they can get from Beacon to Grand Central on an express. The thing that we would need to do is convince Metro North to run an express that goes from Danbury southeast to Grand Central, because everything above White Plains is slow. It's an hour apart. But if you could, and what happens by including Danbury's population in Southeast's ridership, you end up with more of a population base, more tickets sold, and more of a demand, which probably would force Metro North into maybe taking a look at the timetables and how they could readjust. And then the other thing finally is the readjustment of the other stations outside of Danbury, but the 2 other proposed stops, one of them right outside of the university, and another one at exit 1, and what does that all do to all of this as we're doing the work that we're doing right here?
Hi. I know things have changed since COVID too, with people's transportation and movement. And I think Connecticut just came out to be the 5th highest of remote workers. So does that change a lot of like rush hour timing and capacity on the roads? And I know it's right in the middle of your study, but I don't know how that's taken into consideration.
So I know, statewide, obviously, our folks have been looking at it, and, the patterns are, it's come back to pre-pandemic levels. I think it's that spread of the commuting now. It's much more throughout the day. It's not just focused in the peak hour, but it's definitely what the AM is more spread out.
Yeah, AM and the PM starts early, and the distributions are different now. So what used to be like 2-hour peak is now 4-hour peak, and people are turning left instead of turning right. So essentially there's a lot of difference in patterns. So to answer your question, Betsy, we haven't really gone in and looked at specific areas where those distributions have changed. But certainly as we go in and update our pre-pandemic forecasts, certainly we'll see a different shift in, like, maybe it's a mode shift. People don't even drive now. People start to take the bus more or rail more. So those are things, again, would have to be, as we go into NEPA, those have to be looked back again and readjusted.
It's a new world.
Yeah.
I guess, how do you combine or how do you aggregate some of the screening criteria over the whole 4 concepts? So if there's, like, for cost, for example, obviously, there's the main line, the magnitude is much bigger than some of the other ones. How do you combine those measures?
We had a discussion on that yesterday. This is exactly what we're trying to do now, is figure out which of the, okay, let's just say, use cost as your example, although that's not a big consideration. Mainline, let's just say mainline is really expensive and all these other ones are little, and so the addition is minimal. That will do 1 or 2 things. It'll either not be a differentiator because the one segment overrides the others. Or we have also talked about taking out and overriding one and looking at the others to see if there's a real differentiation. Not, oh, it's a little better, a little worse. So if one concept impacts 1,000 wetland acres, and this one impacts 3, and this one impacts 2, and this one impacts 1, and we take that 1,000 out, there's no real differentiation, so we'll just drop it back in and say it's 1,001, 1,003, and 1,002. And so we're going through that right now, and that will be part of our discussion going forward on which of these issues really will differentiate these combinations. But it's ongoing discussions, and we will figure that out. But it's a good point. That's what we're talking about right now.
The cost definitely becomes, it's gonna be a factor as we look at the, implementation plan going forward, and given the fact of the length, and how do you phase this eventual project? So that'll be a discussion that will be happening very soon.
And because part of the purpose of the Pell is to identify funding sources, implementation, phasing, all of that too.
Is the Pell going to go through the COG in detail? Because what I'd like to see are some statements, more, wider ranging statements on the mass transit, the buses, the trains, but also affordable housing and things like this. I know you all are focused on the roads, mostly, but something this important, this central, it should have a, should be looking on the edges more. And I know that the COG is kind of set up to do that, I believe.
So we're only focused on the roads as solutions. We are focused on the resources as considerations to choose the proper solution. And so there has been a large effort to look at underrepresented populations, to look at alternative means of mobility, whether it's buses or walking or cycling. So we are trying to look at exactly what you're talking about. Are we disproportionately taking an apartment complex of a low-income community rather than the one house of high value and high income? So those types of issues have been looked at this level, at this Pell level.
Okay.
I guess just to add to that, I think I see where you're going also, the question in terms of a little more holistically looking at the region. Unfortunately, because it's a transportation study, right? And that FHWA and funding components we have to focus on the transportation aspects. Obviously, we take into account, as Rick was saying, we've got to take into account all the other socioeconomic and demographics and all that. But in terms of from a planning standpoint, it's a transportation study that we have to focus on. I mean, I know that is, if there were
Can that be
plans.
stated explicitly in the Pell communication?
I think the purpose of what the Pell study is, it'll clearly state that in the, probably chapter 1, I think.
It's to reduce congestion, increase mobility through the corridor.
And exactly what a Pell study is.
And we also have an entire section on how we have integrated any of the long-range planning from COGS and their planning and how that has been integrated into this decision. So there is in the narratives of the Pell document those discussions.
If we don't have any more questions on the alternatives, I would like to take the opportunity that we have you all in the room, just if anyone wants to share your thoughts about in the future. We've had lots of remote, on virtual meetings. This is the first one we've had since before COVID. It seems like about 10 years ago, but probably in the last 3 years. I have my own opinions, but I'd love to hear from the folks in the room. A hybrid where we do some remote, some in person, all in person, all remote. Just if there's just a sense of what would be most helpful from here moving forward.
Did you like being in person?
Yeah.
Is there, raise your hand. We won't pick on, I won't get it. Janine might. We won't pick on you. Who would prefer to have sat in your home in your jammies and done something? Anybody, or do you find value in this in-person integration of thoughts and ideas?
You can do a hybrid, right? It can be in person and.
That's the hardest to do.
It's the hardest thing to do. We contemplated that here and opted not to. But if there are enough that would like something, we can figure out solutions.
That's one of the reasons why we ended up taping today, so if you couldn't be here, you could at least participate in terms of.
You could at least, yeah, see the tape.
I think, this is just my bias here, I think we get a lot more sort of, something happens in the room physically in terms of ideas and people building on each other that is hard to recreate virtually. But I can't imagine our lives going back to where we didn't have anything virtually, because it all allows us to do a lot more. We're at a point in this study where it's just, you sort of have to see it, feel it, touch it, and mull it over.
I've come into this study only a year and a half, 2 years. So I have not, this is my first in-person with you all. And almost every presentation, it's crickets when we ask if there's any discussion, any questions. And here we get hands raised, and I personally think we feed off one another. Go ahead.
Just a comment on the last meeting we had in person, as I remember it, as my old mind remembers. There were a lot more people in the room. What caused, or can you tell us why we don't have a room full as we did the last time?
We would average, Marcy, fact check me if you will, about 25 people. We have 15 PAC members here today. It also is striking that we have, I think, just 2 non-public, some sort of municipal or public institution representation here. A lot of our neighborhood, table aside, folks are not here. And I think in part it's a slow return to what we think of or thought of as normal. We did a bit of work to reach out to people to make sure they knew that it was in person and didn't just go to click on the link and go, oh no, there is no meeting. I suspect we could have people who were just not yet comfortable being in person. I mean, we all like to think that the pandemic's over. We're done with it, but I'm not sure it's done with us. So it could be, I don't have an answer, I don't know, but I suspect. And people have been away from the project a little bit and, have not really articulated in. I do think, again, just my opinion, it might be worthwhile contacting PAC members who we haven't seen virtually and who are not in the room to see if they, in fact, want to continue being the PAC representative, and if not, get an opportunity to pass that on. We could have people who have left their former organizations and didn't designate anyone, and so we have a little disconnect there.
You mean like people that retired, right?
Yes.
Janine, can I also ask the question of you and Marcy? Have we seen a reduction even online in our participation?
It depends on the meeting.
Yeah.
2 meetings ago, when we really got into the screening criteria, we had a pretty big turnout, and that was the meeting that, went right to 2 o'clock, and there was great discussion. That might have been the first meeting you presented at, and then our last meeting in the end of August was a little lower turnout.
Right.
I do think it depends on what we're discussing as well, and if people feel comfortable with, as they get more comfortable, they become less engaged. If it's something that really is going to affect you, that's when you get that.
The reason I asked that question is,
so there's a lot of different reasons.
I was also wondering if there's project fatigue. This has been going on for a while. Yeah, we've heard it all before. We don't need to go to another meeting.
Certainly, that can be part of it. And sometimes, like you said, the material, right? It can be a little overwhelming, and everybody's volunteering their time. Thank you for that, right? So that could be a part of it. Everybody is busy. I will say that on some of our other similar studies that we're doing in certain areas, yeah, we are seeing that drop off from the initial PAC meetings on some of those, especially like you said, Janine, in the neighborhood communities. For some reason, and that's what we are trying to go out to some of them, and I think Marcy's team has been doing that on this project, so we'll keep doing that. And again, I think that's gonna, like Rick said, the outreach, it's not done with the Pell study. As we go into NEPA, the extensive public outreach will continue in the NEPA phase, which is that next environmental documentation phase.
Thank you.
I want to personally thank all of you for coming. I know you're giving up some of your time. And for me, it was a pleasure to meet you face to face and to actually feel that there's an interaction and discussion. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. We'll be here.
Yeah, stick around. Okay.